الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونستنصره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إلها واحدا أحدا صمدا لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له كفوا أحد وأشهد أن نبينا وعظيمنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد يقول جل جلاله في محكم التنزيل إن الدين عند الله الإسلام وما اختلف الذين أوتوا الكتاب إلا من بعد ما جاءهم العلم بغيا بينهم ومن يكفر بآيات الله فإن الله سريع الحساب. Before I introduce this new series that I'll be starting over the next number of weeks, it's hard to continue to observe what's happening in the Middle East without concluding or drawing a number of conclusions. Conclusions that I think many of the Muslims have already always known, just maybe never wanted to admit. There is a bully in the Middle East. There's a bully. Of all the countries that are there, there's one that feels that it has the right and the ability to go after whatever it wants, whoever it wants, at any time. And it has built allies amongst the countries within the Middle East who technically should be Muslim and should be behaving as Muslims as well. And this comes from the fact that the Muslims in the Middle East have been weakened over centuries, honestly, at this point. of systematic tyranny and oppression, mistreatment, conscious ignorance, a shaming of identity, and a ripping, honestly, of identity, a stripping of it, really, that's been going on for so long that these countries, these populations of Muslims, that people who have been Muslim for over a millennium, over 1,000 years at least of people being Muslim, have lost their ability to have an opinion, let aside actually have impact. And that's why we are suffering the way we're suffering. That's why we're going on now at 450 days of the people of Gaza just waking up to blood, waking up to destruction, waking up to death, waking up to pain and agony and sorrow, wondering what exactly are they a part of, wondering what nation do they actually belong to. I mean, maybe the first couple of months there was an understanding, but a year and 2 or 3 months into this, it's getting a little bit ridiculous. That there's absolutely, we don't see an end in sight, and any end that we see in sight is not one that has any dignity or integrity left for those people. This spread to the people of Lebanon, to the people of Yemen. It's spread to people all across the region. I'm not interested in getting political, especially to protect people who are here, and people who attend, and people who are a part of our congregation. But this is now something that we cannot act like we don't see. There's a bully in the Middle East, and it has a couple of friends. And it does not see those that surround them to be valuable, to have basic value, to have basic human value. And this is a direct result of the weakness of this ummah, the weakness of the Prophet ﷺ's nation, the weakness of Muslims and their lack of ability to generate their own voices, to work together, to collaborate and to coordinate, and to make sure that their opinion and that their thought process and that their voices reach the platforms that they need to reach and have impact where they need to have impact. And our generation, or this generation that is growing up to the world or coming up into the world, sees this more than probably any other generation before it ever did, and ever will, maybe. These things happened in the past, but there was not, the amount of communication that existed today didn't exist back then. So it wasn't as clear. You would find out about these things a bit late. There was a lagging period. It was lag, it was buffering. It took a while for you to be told the full story. By the time you understood what actually happened, what happened had already happened a long time ago. There's not like much you could have done about it or done. But now, no, it's not like that. Now people see it in real time as it is occurring. They watch it, they sit there and they watch it and they absorb it and they try to swallow what's actually occurring. And that is a different type of pain. And we shall never forget. May that be the message for my younger brothers and sisters. You shall never forget. You will never forget what started 75 years ago and what was reenacted in October of 2023 and what is going on today. No matter how old you get or how much money you make or where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directs you in your life and where you end up in life, you shall never forget what occurred over this year and couple of months. Because if you do, because if we forget the lessons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put on our plate and teaches us, that is one of the reasons for punishment. One of the reasons for punishment as a Muslim is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants you a lesson, He shows you something. Here, this is ibrah, learn from this, and you refuse to learn. Aqwamul anbiya, the people of prophets, as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't send them a miracle of any sort, they wouldn't get punished. Without a miracle, there would be no punishment. They didn't listen to their prophet, fine. They're at fault, obviously, for doing that, and their prophet would continue to push. But as long as he didn't bring them a miracle, they wouldn't get punished. Like when you hear the stories of Qawm Nuh and Qawm Hud and Qawm Salih and Qawm Musa and Qawm Shu'aib and Qawm. When you hear these stories of people who were punished, it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted their prophets a sign, something to remind the people, a reason for them not to be the way they were, a reason for them to turn things around and go in a different direction. And when they didn't, they were punished. A lot hangs on the fact that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches you a lesson, He shows you something, you don't have the luxury to look away. We don't have the luxury to ignore it and act like it didn't happen. And our generation of Muslims, we've been taught a lot over the last year and a half, for sure. For sure. A lot has happened. If I'm going to be more accurate here, maybe for this city, maybe since June 6, a lot has occurred. A lot for us to reflect upon. A lot for us to think about and make decisions based on. Reasons for lives to be lived differently and for decisions to be made on different capacities. That being said, the series that I'm going to begin, I'm going to tackle the idea of understanding Islam. Now, this may seem very simplistic and redundant, but what I'm trying to do throughout this series is to make sure that as a practicing Muslim, you have the correct toolkit and the right mindset to comprehend the aspects of your own religion so that you can practice safely and so that you can interpret the world around you correctly and so that you know where you stand from the people who are with you and the people who are neutral and the people who are against you, and what exactly is your role in all of this, and what weight do you carry as a person, and where are you going with it all. I see people who come to masajid and they pray and they read Quran, but then I hear them talk about their own deen in their own words, when they have a question or they come with a concern or they have a struggle in their lives. That's really where a lot comes out. When someone has a struggle in their life and they come and talk about a difficult time, and I get to hear how they understood their deen when they're telling me about their struggle. And I figure out that, okay, there was a problem, there was an innate problem, an original issue here with how you understood your deen to begin with, which led to the state that you're in right now. And I don't think it's fair that I don't tackle some of these topics. I'm going to start nice and easy. I'm going to start with what is very simple. Everyone in this room has heard and memorized at some point growing up Hadith Jibreel alayhi salam. If you're reading the title, you're thinking, the Sheikh got it wrong. It's 5. It was not 3. Or it's 6 if you're thinking of it. No, I got the number right. Just you have to hear me out so you understand what I'm trying to talk about. The very, very famous hadith called Hadith Jibreel, narrated by Imam Muslim, and it has obviously other narrations and other books of hadith as well that are similar. The hadith, I'll narrate it for you quickly, piece by piece. I may not get through the whole thing today, but enough to make sure that I get my point across. قال عن عمر بن الخطاب قال بينما نحن جلوس عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. When we're sitting with the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام one day, إذ دخل علينا رجل شديد بياض الوجه شديد سواد الشعر عليه أثر السفر لا يعرفه منا أحد. A man came in, and his hair was very black, and his clothes were very white, and it doesn't seem like he has been traveling at all, and none of us know him. He seems like a resident. He walks into the masjid, he looks like he lives here. And back then in Arabia, if you didn't live there, it was obvious, because you didn't look very well. You were disheveled and tired, and your clothing were covered in sand, and you looked like you were at the verge of dying. He walked in, he looked fine. He looked like he just had a nice shower and was wearing new clothing. He looked like a resident. No one in the place had ever seen this man before. So it was very, very peculiar. قال فدخل على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فجلس إليه فأسند ركبتيه إلى ركبتيه ووضع يديه على فخذيه. So he came and he sat to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. And the Prophet ﷺ was sitting with his feet backwards and his knees on top of his thigh on his leg, right? As you sit in salah, for example. So this man came and sat right in front of the Prophet ﷺ and bumped his 2 knees with the knees of the Prophet ﷺ. And then he put his hands on the Prophet ﷺ's end of his thighs. So it was an entrance. He made an entrance. This gentleman made an entrance. Everyone was looking, well, who is this and what is this? Yeah, he walks into a halaqah where the Prophet ﷺ is sitting talking. He walks right in. No one has a clue who he is. He sits, he bumps into the Prophet and puts his hand on the Prophet ﷺ's thighs. And he asks him 3 questions, hence the pillars. He asks him, أخبرني يا محمد صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبرني يا محمد عن الإسلام أخبرني يا محمد عن الإيمان أخبرني يا محمد عن الإحسان. Oh Muhammad, tell me about Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ would pray, it's to give your shahada and to pray your prayer and to fast Ramadan and give your zakat and perform your hajj. Tell me, O Muhammad, about Iman. So to believe is to accept and to acknowledge and to have certainty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His prophets and His books and His messengers and the qada and qadar and yawm al-qiyamah. Oh Muhammad, tell me about ihsan. He tells him it's as if it's when you worship God, when you serve God, as if you see Him, even though you don't, being happy with the fact that He sees you. And within this hadith, what we ended up walking away with, and obviously there's a second piece of it, is that Islam has three dimensions. If you don't like the word three pillars because you think it should exist only for another set of counts, then fine, it has three dimensions. Islam, when you think about Islam for yourself, you have to think about three things at all times. There are three aspects of your tadayyun that you need to take care of, equally, may I add. They have to be cared for equally. Many scholars, when they looked at Islam, Iman, Ihsan, they looked at it in a hierarchy. They looked at it as vertical. Islam, then higher above that is Iman, then higher above that is Ihsan. And yes, in certain contexts of the usage of these words in the Quran, they can be seen as a hierarchy. But for the majority of scholars, well, at least when understanding this hadith, it wasn't seen as a hierarchy. It was looked at horizontally. That these are three buckets that are required in order for you to understand what your deen is. You need to understand these three dimensions. These three pillars have to exist. If one of them falls, then Islam, the deen for you, does not really exist. When Allah says, إِنَّ الدِّينَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الْإِسْلَامِ, this is the faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted for people. وَمَن يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَن يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Those who choose any faith aside from Islam, it will be rejected يوم القيامة. And they will lose. They'll be in a state of loss yawm al-qiyamah. It will not be accepted. We know that's why we accept Islam. That's why we try and practice and learn and teach and spread, because this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran. But then again, I don't think we fully comprehend what this actually means and what this entails upon us. The three pillars, the three dimensions, the three buckets that he talked about, alayhi salatu wasalam. Number one, when he said Islam in this context, he is talking about the practices. He is talking about the rituals. He's talking about the halal and the haram, the wajib and the nahi. Well, that's what you are commanded to do, and that's what you are commanded not to do. All of the aspects of your fiqh, of understanding what is it that you're responsible for, how you're supposed to carry yourself, how you're supposed to conduct yourself in life. That's what Islam is. The list of rituals, the list of do's and the list of don'ts. And you have to take time to understand that list and to learn it appropriately, so that you know how to perform these rituals. You know how to make wudu appropriately, and how to pray, and how to pay your zakah. And these acts of worship, these acts are either acts that are between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just something personal, like reading the Quran or reciting a wird or tasbih and dhikr or something, or the act of hajj or siyam, or something that benefits other people, like zakat, for example. But all of the commands, like bir al-walidain, and jihad, these words, these commands that you're given are either going to be something that's personal, it's just you and God, no one else has any business within this relationship, or it's something that benefits other people directly. Now everything benefits everybody indirectly, but I'm simplifying this just for the sake of this argument. And that's what Islam is. And most people will take some time to understand those pieces. Most practicing Muslim, when we say a practicing Muslim, we are referring to someone who's taken a little bit of time to learn these. Learn enough of these to fit in. To be able to come into a masjid and pray and not stand out and make a mistake where some hajji has to come and tell him that way you shouldn't have done that, or you stood the wrong way, or you faced in the opposite direction, or something that you shouldn't have done. Enough just to get by. The second pillar, dimension, or bucket is Iman, which is basically the belief system. The belief system, your perspectives, how you understand the world. What is your narrative of existence? You woke up one day. We all did. We all just one day woke up, found ourselves alive, found ourselves breathing and thinking. You don't remember your first couple of months. Thankfully so. You don't remember your first couple of years. If you did, it would be very difficult to live, because the amount of embarrassment that comes remembering all of your childhood is actually unbearable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this ability to forget stuff. If I remember what I did in grade 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, I wouldn't be able to even walk in the street because it's extremely embarrassing. The things I said, the way I looked, the way I behaved, nothing I want to remember. I hope people who knew me during that period don't remember me either. But you don't really remember much of your life. You just wake up at a certain age, 16, 17, sometimes even later than that. You wake up and you find yourself someone who has a number of tools in their hands. And it has some metacognitive abilities. You're able to think and analyze and wonder and question and critically think about certain topics in your life, and you're able to make decisions, and your decisions have consequences, and they impact people, and they impact you as well. But you have to understand what is your understanding of all of this? Where did it come from? Why is it there? Where is it going? Who's behind it? Who's responsible for it? Do I have a responsibility in all of this? Is there a mission? Am I required to do something? Am I here just to float around and eat the fruit and drink the water and then die? Or is there something else to it? Is there more to me than that? This is iman. When you say iman billah wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi, this is ghaib, understanding the things that you cannot see. Ghaib is the unseen. From that, you have to figure out what is your narrative. Science is not interested in answering these questions. Never was. It never will be. Science will never tell you why you're here. Science doesn't care about that. Science doesn't care about anything that happened before matter and time-space existed. It's only going to look at the dynamics of that, of what it surrounds us. That's it. But where the bigger questions? If you accept La ilaha illallah, then you accept a number of things after that. About yourself, about your mission, about who you are, about where you're going with things. When you accept Allah's, the Rusul and the Kutub, you mean you accept that there is purpose. You accept that there is a way to live life. You accept that there is a legacy and a code of conduct. When you accept Malaika, you accept that there are things that are going to happen in your life that you have no control over and you have no understanding of, and you cannot always explain the way you want to explain. When you accept Qada and Qadr, you understand certain aspects about the choices you're going to make in your life and the extent of your impact and what exactly that's going to mean for you. When you accept Yawm al-Qiyamah, which is a whole different part of this equation, then you accept accountability. This is Iman. Unfortunately, people spend less time on number 2. Less time on number 2. And when they do, of course, they want to turn it into a civil war. When they finally decide to understand that, they decide to turn it into a civil war, to look for reasons to divide the ummah, to find some detail in understanding God, some detail, some philosophical detail that no one can actually understand, a concept that is so abstract that the word abstract runs away from it, and you're going to ask this person, how do you understand this abstract concept? And if they don't understand it the way your sheikh wrote it down on your little notepad, then that person is no longer worthy of your friendship. Or no wonder. So I don't know. I'm always a little bit scared. Do I ask people, please learn your i'tiqad? Please learn it, but then I don't want people to turn into the cavalry and get on horseback and go after their own brothers because we differ on small details within our understanding of things. But when Iman is understanding the bigger questions, not these detailed things, I can tell you for a fact the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, and those who learned after them had no understanding of the details that we care for. Never talked about these details at all, never even brought them up. But the bigger questions were answered. Who are you? What are you? Where are you from and where are you going? And what exactly is the reason behind all this? Those questions are what you take from i'tiqad. That's what you actually walk away with. People spend less time, unfortunately, on this one. And then the third pillar, al-ihsan. And if you get my draft here, this is where people spend the least amount of time. The least amount of time spent here about ihsan. Ihsan is about your spirituality. It's about knowing that everything that you do has a part of it that needs to be cared for that is not just the appearance of it. That when you pray, yes, you have to have your wudu perfect, and yes, you have to stand towards your qibla, and yes, there are rules that you have to follow in order for your salah to have a hope of being accepted. But then there's an aspect that exists on the inside of you, that exists within your nafs and in your qalb and in your ruh and in your fu'ad. That there's an aspect of your own striving that is internal, that without it you cannot perfect your craft, that you can't do things with the right intentions, that you will get almost nothing Yawm al-Qiyamah if you did not care for. And this gets the least of our care, which is why things aren't working very well for us. Because we have 3 pillars within our deen. and we are not treating them equally, and we don't comprehend that we owe it to ourselves and to our deen to make sure that we have a clear and proper understanding of all three, so that we know what we're doing and what is it that we're watching out for and what is it that we need to improve and change. Because without that, then there's no growth. There's no movement forward for the individual or for the collective. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يغفر لكم يا فوز المستغفرين. استغفر الله. الحمد لله وحده وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبع نهجه ووفى عهده. إخواني وأخواتي، الموضوع اليوم يعني في منتهى البساطة حقيقة، لكن على بساطته فيما أراه من أحوال الناس لا أعتقد أن كثيرا من المسلمين يعي ما أريد الحديث عنه وعيا صحيحا أو وعيا كاملا. الإسلام يا أخواني له 3 دعائم، قام على 3 دعائم. قام على دعامة العبادات، الشعائر، التطبيقات، هذا يسمى عرفا الإسلام، يسميه الإسلام. الممارسات، الشعائر، الحلال والحرام، الأمر والوجوب والنهي، وهذا للمسلم فيه نصيب، عليه أن يتعلم من هذا نصيبه حتى يستطيع أن يطيع الله كما يريد الله أن يطاع، لا كما يريد أن يطيعه العبد. يعني لا أطيع الله على كيفي، أطيع الله كما يريد الله سبحانه وتعالى. هو يأمرني فأطيعه كما يريد وكما ينبغي له، لا كما أهوى أنا، فالأمر لا يتعلق بي ولا بك. والدعامة الثانية الإيمان، والإيمان هو المعتقدات، هو فهمك، ليس فقط فهمك لله سبحانه وتعالى، ولكن فهمك لنفسك، ولماذا أتيت، ومن أنت، وإلى أين أنت ذاهب، وما المطلوب منك، وما مراد الله من خلقك. هذا هو الإيمان. الإيمان هو فهم القضايا التي لا يجيب عنها العلم، التي العلم هو عاجز عن فهمها وعن إيصال مداركها إليك، من الغيبيات التي لا يصل مرادها إليك إلا من وحي من الله سبحانه وتعالى. أما الدعامة الثالثة فالإحسان، وهو تزكية القلب والنفس والروح، والاهتمام بالفؤاد، والاهتمام ببواطن الأعمال، الاهتمام بالنية، والاهتمام بأمراض القلوب، والاهتمام بالحضور والخشوع وإتقان الأعمال والاهتمام بالقيم وبالأخلاق. الإسلام مبني على هذه الدعائم. إذا أزلت دعامة منها سقط الدين كله. فلكل مسلم، على كل مسلم، أن يكون له مسلك اعتقادي ومذهب فكري ومشرب تزكوي. فإذا لم يهتم بواحد من هذه الثلاث لم يستطع أن يقيم الإسلام في حياته. والإسلام لا يقوم إلا على واحدة منها فقط. ولو ظهر لك أنه من الممكن، ولو ظهر أنك إذا أتقنت الفقه فهذا يكفيك، وأتقنت الاعتقاد هذا يكفيك، لا، ما تكتفي إلا بالثلاث. وهذا الذي نريد أن نتطرق إليه خلال الأسابيع القادمة، حتى يحسن الإنسان والمسلم استيعاب هذه الثلاث. See, every person has to have 3 things. You have to have a madhab fiqhi. You have to know how you're going to worship God, how you're going to actually follow along, what you're going to base your halal and haram and mandatory and obligations, what are you going to base them on? Where are you bringing that from? Where are you bringing your rulings from, and how are you figuring out what steps to make? You have to have a madhab. You have to learn from a collection of 100,000 scholars and what they said. And then you have to follow that so that you are worshipping God, you are performing your Islam appropriately. And you need a maslak i'tiqadi. You have to have a way of understanding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding your deen, understanding yourself and where you come from. You have to take that from a large collection of scholars as well, who will explain to you exactly who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and what his kutub and his rusul and his malaika and qada al-qadar and yawm al-akhir, what they mean and what they mean to you, and how that's going to affect you in your life. And then you have to have a mashrab tazkawi. You have to have some form of understanding of yourself, of understanding how it is that you're going to carry yourself in this life, and who exists on the inside. And why is it that you want to do something, you know it's a good thing to do, you have the ability to do it, but then you don't do it? Think about this. Explain it to an alien, please. Explain it to an alien coming to us. And he comes and say, oh, you want to do this? Yes. You can do this. Yes. You have all the tools. Yes. It's good for you. Yes. You like it. Yes. Have you done it? No. Explain to me why. Explain it. Go ahead. Well, we make up words. We make up words. I'm lazy. What does that mean? That has no meaning. That's a word that has no meaning to it. It has no meaning. We made it up. We made this, wallahi, in language, we made up a word. All of us, every culture, because we had no way to explain that this is something I want to do, I must do, I can do, I should do, but I'm not doing it. Like, ya Sheikh, why aren't you doing it? I don't know. That's the answer where, wallahi. You don't know. You're an adult and you don't know. I expect that from my 3-year-old, from my 5-year-old. The moment they're an adult, you don't know? What do you mean you don't know? Who's supposed to know? Who do I go to for the answer of this question? Please, direct me to the person who's going to tell me why you won't do what you should do, can do, and want to do. Please, explain to me, who do I go to? I need to know. I need to know. I have to go to someone to ask why it is that you're not doing what you should be doing in life. And you have, I don't know. What do you mean? Who else is going to know but you? Islam is all three. You have to spend an equal amount of time for each of them. You have to spend an equal amount of time learning your fiqh, understanding how to worship God, understanding what is halal and haram, what is obligatory and what is mandatory and what is not, and what you need to stay away from. You have to spend a portion of time learning that, and then an equal portion of time understanding who God is, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, how you understand, answering the big questions of life, answering why it is that you believe in a God to begin with, and who you are and where you came from. And then you have to spend an equal, and I emphasize equal, amount of time understanding yourself and why it is you are the way you are, and how to overcome this little monster that exists on the inside of each and every one of us, that comes out every time you want to do something better, every time you want to make a step forward that's in your best interest, and it holds you back. And without an equal interest from every Muslim here, in these 3 pillars, in these 3 dimensions, in these 3 buckets, Islam is not going to function. It's just not. It doesn't function with one of them missing. We know that because history has taught us that. Tajruba, just the practicality of it has taught us that. So make sure that you think about this today, and think about what your understanding of Islam is, and how you understand your role towards your own deen, and what your deen is supposed to be doing for you. Because I can tell you, the moment a problem happens, and someone takes me aside and starts talking to me about their problem, it becomes very obvious the lack of comprehension of the basics of Islam, the amount of superstition, the amount of dependence on that which you cannot depend upon, the amount of entitlement, the lack of seriousness towards their faith, the lack of understanding their own responsibility, the lack of understanding their own accountability. The equation is unclear to people. They don't understand the equation of it all. And it becomes very clear with just a few words. And it saddens me because we have nothing holding us back from learning this stuff. You could have grown up in a place where you couldn't have learned it, even if you wanted to. But now you can. The world, it's offered, even if you don't like any of the shuyukh in the city, and all of them are not worth listening to you. You can still learn this stuff. You can still turn on and listen and learn, so that you're filling in these buckets equally at the same time, and they're all rising. If i'tiqad rises but suluk and Islam does, ihsan and Islam don't, then that person's going to end up in trouble. If Islam rises and ihsan and iman aren't rising, then we have a problem. If ihsan rises and no understanding of Islam and iman, we have a problem. And I can give you, and I see the examples of those who are walking, but they're not walking straight. They have an imbalance. They're walking crooked because there's a part that's emphasized and other parts that are not. And it's obvious in their practice and in their words and the way that they carry themselves and carry their own deen that there's something missing. And we're going to try and tackle that to the best of my ability over the next number of weeks, inshallah ta'ala. I hope that was a benefit to you. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ أَمَرَنَا بِأَمْرٍ عَظِيمٍ فَقَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وارض اللهم عن الأربعة الخلفاء السادة الحنفاء وأبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي، وارض اللهم عن أزواجه أمهات المؤمنين وعن آله الطيبين الطاهرين وعن صحابته الغر الميامين وعن التابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين، وعنا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم فرج هموم المهمومين ونفس كروب المكروبين، وارفع الغم عن المغمومين، وارفع الظلم عن المظلومين، واحقن دماءنا ودماء المسلمين. اللهم احقن دماء إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان. اللهم احقن دماءهم في غزة، اللهم احقن دماءهم في فلسطين، اللهم احقن دماءهم في لبنان وفي اليمن وفي السودان وفي مصر وفي ليبيا وفي كل بقاع الأرض يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجمع كلمة المسلمين على الحق والتوحيد على الوجه الذي يرضيك عنا وعنهم في الدنيا والآخرة يا رب العالمين. ردنا أجمعين إليك وإلى دينك ردا جميلا، وتب علينا من جميع ذنوبنا توبة نصوحا، طهرنا بها قلبا وجسدا وروحا، وما ذلك عليك اللهم بعزيز، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي، يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. أقم الصلاة.